Hey everybody, Mike Shea here. I'm along with Ryan Mendoza. I am the writer and co-creator of Miskatonic High. Ryan is the artist and co-creator of Miskatonic High. And we are here to talk about issue number 27. How you doing, Ryan?
27. Yep. 27, fast approaching 30.
Yep, there we go. Getting the big numbers.
Feels like
Um,
it's catching up to my age.
yeah, can you imagine once it starts passing us? Ooh. Um, I want to start by talking about this cover because again, this is one of my favorite covers. I really like this one. It's the
Really?
Yeah, oh, I love this one. So there's a couple of things going on here which I really like. The contrast of the yellow and the blues and purples is
Oh,
such
yeah,
a
yeah.
nice color combination. I I I use it other places, but like I really
Hmm.
love it to see it. And then I also just like the kids and introducing the new kids and then this creepy background, and it's got a nice kind of almost Stranger Things vibe to it that I like.
Yeah,
um
I can see that.
yeah, just like kids in a group of kids put in a creepy situation. It's just that always works for me.
Yeah, creepy laboratory,
Hmm.
creepy forest,
Hmm.
strange people in the background,
Hmm.
tentacles.
Yeah, all of
And
that.
this is the first time that I used the new coloring method for the regular cover. I
Hmm.
did it before with the previous gatefold,
Yeah.
and I think I was getting a bit more comfortable with it, and I was trying a bit more um, techniques with it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've been experimenting a lot with it, and yeah, for this cover, uh, it was kind of tough actually because with with the story,
Hmm.
we couldn't really spoil it too much, especially with the advent of the new kids. So
Hmm.
we had to go with a bit of a novel-esque cover.
Hmm.
If you get my drift, like it's just a bunch of random photos or images of the characters, and then the odd
Hmm.
background details. So it's very vague at that to that point, but it still gives off that weird vibe
Hmm.
that attracts the viewers or the readers to like what's going on here. Something's different about this.
Yeah.
And of course, I wanted to bring that darkness back a bit
Hmm.
because the even though the colors are a bit more vibrant,
Hmm.
I still wanted to retain the darkness of the image because this issue is kind of pretty dark if you kind of read through it, and it doesn't really start out that way because as you'll see later, it's very different from what we've tackled before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted that contrast of poppy school vibe, and then all of a sudden it becomes darker towards the end.
Right. I also really like the way, okay, we talked a bit about how we're introducing new characters here, but it's just like a cool, like this is a we have two new characters here, but we also have a combination of characters that we don't see. Like we've never seen this before, where we have Simon and Ricky and Jenny. Like those
Mhm.
are not three of our normal characters you would put together. And then these two other new characters. It just, to me, it almost feels like we're putting together a new group that we haven't seen before, and it's kind of like rather than the normal team that you normally see, it's like, oh, here's a new one and we're going to see what they do. And again, it's just it really works for me. Like it draws me in ways that I really like.
Yeah, yeah, because we introduced Ricky later on, and then
Hmm.
of course Jenny just this season.
Hmm.
And we've been trying to like mix and match the characters throughout the story, like last issue or I can't recall which
Right.
issue was Anton and Sarah, but we
Mhm.
don't usually have them pair up as well. But lately, we've been having the two of them together, and we've been trying out new character dynamics
Yep.
because introducing team ups between characters that don't usually interact or team up usually brings up new drama
Mhm.
and intrigue, and it's just interesting that way to keep the comic story vibe going.
Right, exactly. And it's fun because when we were talking about this issue and we were talking about sending Simon to public school and we would have to introduce new kids and trying to figure out who those new kids were going to be. It's both really exciting because you're like creating new characters and you expect them, you're probably going to see them for a while, but also it's kind of daunting because it's like, okay, we've done a good job of creating characters so far. We got to really do our best to make these new characters as alive and as fun and useful and all of these things as the old characters. So it's like it's a challenge, and but again, I really like it. I'm a we're both longtime regular comic book readers, and one of my favorite tropes of a comic book, like a team comic book, is like all of your X-Men or Fantastic Four are gone except for the one character, and the one character has to put together a new team to go rescue the old team or put together the new team. And it's like I always like that, because it's like you got a little bit of the old and you got a little bit of the new, and it's just like a fun new combination that you haven't seen before. So to me, that's kind of what this is. And so it's like it's got this energy for me that really just draws me in.
Yeah, yeah, and also because the school is very different from
Mhm,
Miskatonic High, so
mhm.
the characters and the way they dress up and their personalities are very different from what we've been used to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we're going to be replacing the
No.
the older characters, but this is just a fun way to like introduce additional characters to the world,
Right.
and then see how they interact with the kids in future storylines.
Hmm.
It just makes it more interesting that way, that it keeps the world alive, like
Hmm.
it's constant flow of people and things going on that
Right.
you don't use when you belong to a group or a clique. You usually are not aware of what's going on outside, and you're just wrapped up within that
Yeah.
bubble. And then when you do break out like Simon did,
Hmm.
he kind of notices that, hey, wait a minute, these things are just not happening in our school, it's happening all around us. And yeah, it makes the world bigger
Right.
in a sense.
Right. And I also think it's true what you said about how, like, when you're in a clique, you have really normal dynamics. Like, this is my best friend. These are our other friends that we hang out with. We go and we sit and we eat lunch with them. And, I see them after school and I play, sport with this kid or I play video games with that kid or whatever. And then
Yeah.
suddenly you're thrown out of your comfort zone. You're put in this other place and you have to make new friends, and
Hmm.
it's really uncomfortable in that situation. But then you start seeing the world in a bigger way. It's like, here are kids who maybe you knew, maybe you didn't know, and maybe you've known all of your life, but never really interacted with. And suddenly you're forced to, and it's like you're introduced to a whole new world, and they're cool and they're different. And, you become a different person when you start interacting with them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a horror story wherein you explore the outside, you go to the forest, even though your friends are saying, don't go there alone.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you explore the dark forest, and then you meet new creatures or characters. It's scary going to a new school or a new
Yeah.
place. Like, for example, during vacation, if you have to
Mhm.
go to a camp or
Oh, yeah, yeah.
to a relative's place, like
Hmm.
you don't know anybody there, you're leaving your friends behind, your neighbors are new to you, so
Hmm.
it's scary. It might be even scarier than monsters.
Hmm. Hmm. Which is And again, like that right there, that's Miskatonic High, the comic book, which is, you got these really scary monster stuff, but you also got this normal, just being a kid things that are scary as well, and just sort of
Yeah, yeah.
putting them together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so before we get into this, when we were putting the story together, we decided to sort of tell two stories at once. We were telling Simon's story over at the Sentinel Hills Regional School, the new public school, and then we were also wanting to tell sort of what was going on in Miskatonic High. And the way to do it, we had been talking for a while about doing something with Ricky, and sort of the nice thing about a school newspaper is the people who work on the school newspaper are usually very aware of everything that's going on in the high school, because they go and they talk to this person and they talk to that person and they talk to this person and they're taking pictures of this. So it was kind of a nice way to use Ricky to sort of check in on all of the kids who are back at Miskatonic High. Um, but it wasn't going to work if we didn't give him somebody to talk to, and thought
Mm-hmm.
it would be fun since we have Jenny that maybe she would be interested in joining the newspaper. She might be interested in finding out more about the school since we know that she has an interest in that. So it was it was a lot of fun. Like you were saying, put different characters together in combinations that we hadn't seen before. And I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun to stick them together.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we go ahead and jump into the comic? We start after Sarah gives us the previouslys. We jump into this pit.
I was wrong. It actually starts out pretty dark.
Yeah, it starts out very dark. So we find out that it's Monday night, and there's a kid, a teenager, in a pit, calling up and trying to attract the attention of the people up there, whoever put him in this pit. And it's really weird because his eyes aren't working the way that he thought they were. And
No, they're not.
no, they're not. Because apparently they've been reattached to his hands. They've been plucked out of his eyes. His eyes have been sewn shut, and they're attached to his hands. And he starts screaming. And, it's the classic horror story where you start off with the victim and you see it and you're like, oh crap, this is going to be dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this I imagine was a challenge. How do you draw and tell a story from the point of view of somebody whose eyeballs are now attached to their hands? Um, do you want to talk about how you handled that challenge?
Yeah, I just had to rely on the script
Hmm.
and really stick close to the description. So the challenge really is just the composition of it. Like, where do you place the camera?
Hmm.
How do you angle the panels to make it look more interesting and scary? Because uh, it's very hard to convey darkness,
Yeah,
especially make it scary without looking muddy.
yeah,
So it has to have a certain vibrancy. So even when you're watching a movie during nighttime scenes or dark scenes, you still have that bluish or
yeah,
greenish or even yellowish light flowing to like make a silhouette of whatever it is that's going on, or just give a hint of uh, highlight to the characters, because it's very hard to show it clearly during the dark, and you don't want to have dark messy looking images in the panel, or else it won't translate well as a drawing.
right.
Also, I had to like convey the look of the above
Hmm.
of the pit, and
Yeah,
that was kind of
yeah.
that was challenging because I had to design the dungeon above,
Hmm.
but from a
Yeah, from a down
worm
point
point
of
of
view.
view,
Yeah,
worm's eye point of view. So it, in that case, I had to imagine what the ceilings look like.
hmm,
So so it kind of gives you a sense of where he is. It's definitely below ground because of the I keep forgetting what they're
Yeah,
called,
stalactites.
stalactites,
Yeah.
stalagmites, I don't know. And then of course there are those weird glowing tubes,
Hmm.
and then the arches around in the cave. So it's kind of confusing. And if he wasn't blind, he'd be scared.
Yeah.
He'd be more scared.
Yeah, it's very evocative. It's, like to have the cave, but then also the brickwork, there, and then the bars,
Mhm.
and then these glowing tubes. It's like,
Yeah, so
yeah,
it has that sense of mystery in it,
yeah,
aside from the gory aspect, of course, which is kind of the easier parts because we've been doing this comic for like a few years now,
mhm.
and blood and gore comes and goes with the book, and
Yeah,
you just have to find new ways to like convey it without looking too egregious or something like that.
yeah,
And but the descriptions in the script is pretty helpful in that
mm,
regards, and I think it helps bring out the art easily.
yeah. Well, and it's funny because, I talk to people and I'm always like, oh yeah, Miskatonic High. It's not too gory, it's not too bloody or anything like that. And then we get to a page like that and I'm like, oh, that's right. It is actually pretty gory.
Well, yeah, I forgot that it started out this way, so we can't remember
Yeah.
everything.
Can't expect us to remember. So we go
I
from
can't even
there.
remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah, right. I can't even remember this morning. Um, so we go to Tuesday morning, Sentinel Hill Regional School. So where I grew up, there was there was an old school. So sort of set. I think we talked about this before. I grew up in a little New England town, and they
Mhm.
had a public school there, but they closed it down, and then they went to this regional school, and it was called Monument Mountain. And so when we were trying to come up with the public school for here, Sentinel Hill is kind of a Lovecraftian thing, so decided just to call it the Sentinel Hill Regional School. It also nicely sort of put it in, um, um, if you think about it, it's kind of like Dunwich, the Dunwich Horror. So it's like Sentinel Hill we know is in Dunwich or
Somewhere around that
yeah, somewhere right
area,
around
right?
there. So it kind of gives you the idea that the public school is probably somewhere around there, which we've established is kind of the more rural or down on its luck part of the community. Um, so
Yeah,
as
I think we've seen the school before
Mhm.
in the previous issue, so
Yeah.
but we haven't seen the entirety of it
Mm.
until now.
Right, we were sort of setting it up that some of that Simon was going to go there, but we hadn't really committed to putting him inside and really seeing all of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's kind of a rundown place. It's on the river, but you can see that the river is polluted and it's got all kinds of stuff floating in it. Um, and then we immediately go to first period, which is Simon in auto shop, which we had established that I think an issue or two ago where he got a schedule and there wasn't like an advanced class anywhere on his schedule and he had auto shop. Um, and one of my favorite things is like we drop these things in like jokes, like Simon going to auto shop, and then an issue later we see it and it's like, oh, we're really committed to him going to auto shop. Um,
Yeah, and me regretting
well, certainly he's regretting it.
it.
Um, I is that something that you guys have in your high schools? We have auto shop here where like you go and
No, we don't.
oh yeah, so
We
like
don't, but it depends on the school
mm,
because there are certain technical schools
mhm,
here that do have these things. Where I went, we didn't have this.
mm,
Um, but during college,
mhm.
we did have this because
Oh,
I
did you?
took up a bit of mechanical engineering. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but high school, no, we didn't have this.
Yeah, so here a lot of schools have it in high school because it's like for kids who aren't necessarily going to go on to college and they want to trade.
Yeah, yeah,
And so they can
yeah.
really learn that stuff there. And so like my cousin did that. He did auto
Hmm.
body and he ended up that became his career. Um
Yeah.
So Simon is there. Mr. Byrne, who is the teacher, is going through the attendance, and of course, there's certain kids who aren't there. This kid named Mark, who just is not there. Um, he says he's going to add him to the list, and um, he is told not to. Jack tells him not to because apparently the list is when you're on kind of like the dropout list, that you no longer are coming to school and you're no longer attending school. Um, which we find out very quickly is kind of a problem here, that kids just stop coming. Um,
Hmm.
uh, and so Simon says hi, he's part of the class, and so he goes and sits down, and he's put next to Jack in on Mark's chair, um, which Jack isn't having, and um, as we quickly see, he ends up getting hit before, for sitting in Mark's chair. Um, let's talk a little bit, because I really love that we have Tracy here, just sort of jamming out, to, with her headphones on and just sort of doing her own thing in the background, which is kind of a great way to introduce her. Um, let's talk about Tracy a little bit, because I think she is kind of the breakout character of this new group. Like, she's fun, she's funny, she looks cool, but also ridiculous. Like, because we went back and forth kind of about who she was and everything, but you really took the lead on creating the visual for her character. So, kind of how did you come up with the look for her?
Yeah, I've been doing these artworks for one of our readers,
Hmm.
and he's really into this synthwave cat thing. So I would put it in the comic book as a character.
Hmm. That's true. She is kind
So
of cat-like. Yeah.
yeah, she has
Yeah.
those cat ears,
Hmm.
headphones, and then the color motif on her shirt is kind of similar to the 80s synthwave
Hmm.
coloring. And then I wanted her to have that Back to the Future look.
Yeah. Okay, I see that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it's very 80s. She's
Yeah.
very 80s. And that's the vibe that I wanted to give her. And she's kind of, yeah, she's kind of fun-loving, outgoing. We don't really get a sense of what her true character is yet.
Yeah.
But as we get deeper into the story, I think we'll find out a bit more about her.
Right. I think so. And I just like that, she's kind of in her own little world, but she also doesn't
She
care
is.
she just doesn't care at all if anybody notices that she's in her own little world. She's just doing her own thing. She's just like, I'm
Yeah,
me.
with
Get
these
over it.
earlier stories about them, we don't really know much about them. We don't know the family history or
Right.
what molded them into these kind of characters. So I just kind of laid the foundation. I know you have some ideas about
Mhm.
them for the future, but yeah, basically this is just a teaser of what they could be in the future.
Right. And I don't know about you, but I always think, like, you introduce a character, but then over the course of the next several issues, you're gonna figure out who they are. Like,
Hmm.
as we see them in action, like, things are gonna click. Like, not all of the main characters were completely set in stone when we first
Yep.
started. I know it took me a little while before I knew exactly who each character was and had
Yeah.
an idea of who they were and what they were about.
And I think
So
that made for a more natural progression of the
yeah,
characters. It didn't feel rushed or forced,
yeah,
like we were trying to convey the whole
yeah,
personality and the whole history of a character in just a few panels, just a few issues. I think it's better for some characters to not be that likable for the first few seasons,
yeah.
and then
Mhm.
progressively they become more interesting,
Yeah,
and then you kind of know why. And that's the important thing, is you know why you like the character now.
yeah. Yeah, and I do think there's a thing, like, in real life where you meet a person and they're a little weird and they're a little standoffish or you're a little standoffish, and it takes a while for you to get to know them, but sort of as
True.
the process of you getting to know them and them getting to know you, you bend a little, they bend a little, and next thing you know, you guys are friends and you have this whole new language of conversation with each other.
Yeah, it's normal with people. I mean, some people are more outgoing.
Mhm,
They show their emotions in their actions already, but some are more reserved
mhm,
and they're not that trusting. So it
yeah,
takes a while to break through their shell. And
mhm,
but once you get to know them, you realize that they're pretty awesome.
yeah. Yeah, and I think we're gonna get there. Jack, of course, is, the kid who hits Simon, which it might be a little while before he comes out of his shell. Um, so then we go to second period. Simon is late for Mrs. Spencer's history class. Apparently, they're learning about Caesar and the Roman Empire in Italy. She has a days until retirement calendar, which when I first got my job, my boss had that up on her desk, so I knew that she was really, really interested in staying. Um, so I've always had that sort of thing in the back of my head, like, yep, you can always tell a character if they if they have a countdown calendar to getting out of there. She is upset that he is late for class and says, well, if you need help with making up your classwork, but he goes ahead and slaps down his classwork, and it ends up being the entire classwork for the entire next year. Because of course Simon, is very smart and has done all this, and this is not an advanced history class for him at all. Um, she says, "Well, okay, look, I don't have another history class I can put you in. Let me go ahead and put you in my study hall." Um, as they're heading towards the study hall, she has to wake up a kid from her class who apparently slept through class. His name is Leclerc, and he plays basketball. Um, so she brings Simon to the next room, to the study hall, which is happens to be also where the school newspaper meets. The school newspaper is called The Observer, and the two girls who work on it are sitting there fighting at as sort of their introduction. Um, we see Tracy again from the previous period, and she is arguing with Danny, the newspaper editor, because Danny will not run her article on munchies. Um, let's go ahead and talk a bit about these two characters. I kind of feel like we're going to be doing that a lot because we're introducing a lot of new characters. We have Mrs. Spencer, who is the history teacher and looks like a history teacher who can't wait to get out of there. Um, the sad thing is it's not that long since I've started to wear reading glasses myself, so maybe I need a days until retirement calendar. My eyes are getting worse. And then we have Danny, and Danny's the editor, and she's kind of the other new girl that we're going to meet from this school. Um, she is completely different from Tracy. Like, I'm not sure you could have two characters who are different from each other. Like, Tracy is fun loving, off in her own little world, weird little world, doesn't care what anybody thinks, wears what she wants. And Danny is kind of like no nonsense editor. She's like this, this, this. Um, so why don't you talk about how you designed Danny? Because I think her design really fits her character, how she should look.
Yeah, well, I wanted a contrast for Tracy
Hmm.
because in the script they do argue a lot, but I wanted to show her being a journalist, but same time still being a student.
Hmm.
So it's not full on like uh dress or anything like that, but I wanted her to look a bit more tougher and more athletic.
Hmm.
And so she has that smartwatch with her and then ponytail so that she's always on the go. She's
Hmm.
got the boots on, ready to go anywhere. and even later, I think she's wearing sneakers or something. You know,
Mhm.
she's always prepared for all eventualities.
Right.
So, like you said, she's very serious
Mhm.
compared to Tracy, who's a bit more laid back. And I think we can see the contrast of the characters when the teacher is trying to
Yeah.
stop them from arguing. So
Mhm.
yeah, the contrast is already there to be seen.
Mhm. Yeah, that's that position right there of the teacher is what I do most days with my kids. Like you go to your corner, you go to your corner. Um, yep, I do think it works great because she feels serious, but she does still feel like a teenager. She doesn't feel like, a 23-year-old, serious journalist in high school. Um, so Mrs. Spencer says, Danielle's the editor. I trust her judgment. And also, hey, Tracy, you're supposed to be turning in your past due work for me. Um, and it's due by Friday. She's like, oh, okay. And so Mrs. Spencer leaves Simon there. Um, well, she goes back to her class, and Tracy takes an interest in Simon because Tracy has heard the rumors that Simon is coming, and has heard about the kid who got expelled from Miskatonic High, and the rumor is that he killed someone, um, which of course freaks him out because he's like, no, I didn't, I got expelled for voter fraud, and Tracy's like, well, that's lame. Um, and of course, Tracy is great at getting under Simon's skin the same way she's great at getting under Danny's skin. She's just that kind of character. She's like, yeah, whatever. She just says what she wants, and if it upsets anybody, she doesn't care. Um, so Tracy spills the beans that Danny is trying to get a journalism scholarship. And of course, Simon has been trying to figure out a way to get out of this school, get back into Miskatonic High, get back to some like real school in his mind. And so he suddenly thinks, oh, wait, there might be a way to get out of this school. And so now he's interested in being on the school newspaper. Um, Danny is like, oh God, this is the last thing I need is one more kid, and asks Tracy to go ahead and give Simon the tour of the school just to get him out of her hair. Um, so Tracy takes him on a tour, which uh, is fun. I think it works really well that this is just such a rundown school. The science lab is messed up. You know, um, it's missing things, and it's got Mr. Burns' missing finger from when he cut it off with one of the buzz saws or whatever. And takes him to the art/music room where it's just a mess and there's broken down musical equipment and all that. And Simon is completely put off because things are supposed to be perfect. This is Simon. It's supposed to be perfect. And he picks up the violin and she's like, oh, you can play? And he's like, yeah, of course I can. What do you want to play? And he's like, whatever, man, just let it jam the synth wave, man. Um, and as she's playing, things start to get really weird. Um, and she starts talking about weird stuff. And I don't, I think Simon thinks she's high because, of course, she's been smoking weed this whole time. Um, but she's talking about, feel the cosmos swirling around you, staring into you, and talking about seeing Jack outside, the fish guy. And of course, Simon isn't picking up on any of this. And we, of course, as readers, have been through quite a bit. So we know
Yeah, we have an idea.
right. And we've seen the link between music and weird cosmos things.
Yeah, especially with the background of Simon's father
Right.
that we saw in issue, I can't remember.
12.
It
12.
12?
Yeah.
Yeah, 12.
Yeah. And then
So
of course,
yeah.
yeah. And then of course, when he went to India and his grandfather and all that, and we got more of it. So yeah.
So it's kind of opening a gate to a link to a past.
Right, exactly. But I also like and I can't remember whether other writers have done this. I think they have talked about, drugs also being a gateway to other perceptions that you can't see in normal life. So,
Yeah, particularly, I think narcotics or
mm,
something.
mhm,
I think the ones you get from the jungles, like DMT and
yeah,
stuff like that, kind of makes you hallucinate. And
yep,
I think shamans
hmm,
and witch doctors kind of use
yep,
that to like contact their gods or
yep,
something, and then they kind of um, see images of the future and the past and
right,
all of those things.
right.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah, so like the combination of the drugs and the music, you're like, the readers, like Simon probably thinks she's crazy, but maybe there's something there. But we as readers know, okay, drugs and this weird music, like she's probably connected to something.
yeah, we had this same situation before in the very first issue when they encountered the mushrooms, and
Hmm.
they thought that the whole Egypt thing was just
Yeah,
them dreaming it up because of the poisonous nature of the mushrooms.
right,
So that's
exactly.
just the way Simon thinks. Is always logical, that he thinks that there's always an explanation for everything. And it's been proven wrong all the time.
Yeah, that's the great thing is Simon is so smart, and yet he's always wrong about this.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's why we like him.
Yeah, yeah, I like him. Okay, so something's going on there, and we cut back to Miskatonic High, where we are in the Tatler office, which is the school newspaper at Miskatonic High, and Ricky is just hanging out there reading comics and eating chips and stuff. When Jenny walks in, Jenny wants to know if she can start working at the newspaper. Um, Ricky is initially a little skeptical, but like, he's still suspicious of her from issue 23 when she was introduced and um, the shadow showed up and all the monsters started showing up and people were seeing them and they saw him at the assembly and all that. And um, so he immediately just point blank asks her, how do we know that you're not working with the shadow? And Jenny's like, oh, fine, you got me. I'm working with a powerful eldritch creature with the ability to alter reality itself, all to mess with a small private school. Um, which of course throws Ricky off because like, why would somebody admit it? So she must be, being sarcastic. Um, and so she decides to join the school newspaper. Ricky is like, yeah, okay. He's also got the problem of he has no news for his newspaper this issue. The blank page is, as the writer of a comic, I will tell you that a blank page is really, really scary. Um, you gotta fill it. Um, so I thought it was fun that to go ahead and have him start off with nothing and he's got to go produce a whole newspaper. And so that's what he's going to do. He's going to go out and he's going to explore Miskatonic High. And by the time they're done from this day, they're going to have enough news to fill up the newspaper. Um, they start off by going down to the basement where we had seen in issue 24 with Sarah and the Carnies that there had been a big hole in the basement wall where they had gone through and had gone to the Rat Things caverns and the Carney hadn't come back. Um, so it's kind of also a nice way for us to sort of revisit some of those stories. Like one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, like, how does nobody know, that this just happened, or why do you move on so quickly to the next story? Like, why isn't there some fallout from the previous one? So I wanted to show through Ricky, kind of why that was that, people move on very quickly at Miskatonic High because they don't want to believe it, and because certain people don't want anybody to be talking about it.
Yeah, if a smart kid like Simon is still having difficulties believing all of this stuff,
Mhm.
what do you think normal people with normal job would think about it? I
Right,
mean, I'm pretty sure that they know something's wrong, but they don't want to confront their fears. I mean,
right,
I think it's a normal human intuition thing to just leave the crazy things
Yeah.
behind you and just concentrate on your work. But
Right.
you know, I think, yeah, you're right about having to explore the going ons in the school once in a while, and I think we'll be going through that a lot more with the second half of the season,
Yeah.
like we mentioned before. So yeah, it's a great way to explore what's going on behind the scenes when we have Ricky
Yeah.
in the story. I think that's the thing that uh, I've noticed with Ricky's stories, that we get to see what the other side of the comic of this world is
Yeah.
going through.
Yeah. Sort of like the normal point of view, and like it's kind of like the if you weren't reading Miskatonic High and you could only see certain things and it'd be like trying to put together what happened based upon you see these little bits of it. Like it wouldn't make any sense unless you started to believe
Mhm.
that crazy things were happening, but also people are lying to you about it. So it's like you don't have the complete truth. You're trying to put it together and you probably don't trust anybody. And as we know from Matt's whole story, there's a lot of people in Miskatonic who are just lying to everyone about everything for
Yeah,
their
yeah,
own reasons.
if you remember from issue 23, I
Yeah.
mean, they straight up lied about the situation in the school. It was so evident that there were monsters there, and then they blame it on the
Gas
gas
leak. Yeah.
situation.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, the evidence is there already. It's just that some people don't like to believe in that stuff.
Right. And I think as you were saying, the further we go along, especially in this season and then, after that is, you know, starting to realize why people are lying about this stuff and why people are covering up this stuff and what it means and what they can do about it. Part of being a teenager is you really don't have a whole lot of control over your life. Adults are telling you to do this, adults are telling you to do that. You're not allowed to do certain things. It's like, so part of it is, there's all.
Yeah, but we also have to look at it from the point of view of the older people. Like,
Mhm.
why are they doing this? Is it maybe for your own good?
Right,
Maybe they are covering it up because if it comes out to the public, it's going to get even worse.
right,
So there's always two sides to the story, and maybe even a third.
right. Yeah, I think that's really true. So they leave. So they're talking about how to write the story about this big hole in the basement. And so she's like, um, at first she asks like, "Is this a story?" And he's like, "Giant hole repaired? Nah, that's not really a story." And talking about the carnies who ran down there and disappeared. Um, And then she starts getting into it too. Like, well, can the story be bodies of carnies found in giant hole? Which sounds like a great story. I would read that. Um, but Ricky points out we haven't found their bodies yet, so you can't. It's what we're really doing is seeing what kind of journalist or what kind of reporter Ricky is, and where his line of the truth is. Like the truth is they haven't found the carnies, so they can't say that the bodies of the carnies were found. Um,
Mhm.
and she's like, so do we have to wait until we have proof? Like, can we run anything now? And he's like, we just add a question mark. Missing carnies killed inside school walls? Question mark? Because, to a reporter, you didn't lie there. You said you're asking the question, but it's also like a really loaded question. Like,
Mhm.
it's not like honest and clear. Like, Ricky has no problem being sensational. Like, he's reporting about, body snatching and Carney's, disappearing inside walls. Like he knows this is true. He's interested in it, but he's also interested in pumping up the story. But there is a line where he's not willing to lie about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like Ricky. I think he's an interesting character. We've talked about this before, like with Miskatonic High is kind of its own little world inside the school walls. Like you have your
Mhm.
own courtroom, you have your own police force, and you have your own reporter. It's
Yeah.
it's just teenage kids doing it, and it's him, and nobody believes him. So
Yeah, that's the problem is even if he comes up with evidence, he's not even sure what will happen with that. And if those evidence are even authentic or
Right.
genuine.
Right. And also, like,
So
even if he did, would people believe him?
yeah,
People,
that's the thing.
yeah, it's
So yeah, even if he leans on the sensationalism stuff, he knows uh he knows the where he can push and
mhm,
where to hold back
yeah,
or fold even.
yeah. But you also get the sense about Ricky that like he wants to know the truth and he's gonna find out the truth. And if you're gonna stand in his way like Simon did, he's just gonna bulldoze right over you one way or another. Like he's
Yeah.
tenacious. Yeah. Um, as they're coming out of the hole, out of the basement, we see a bit of Ren in the background who's on the phone, apparently with the prison trying to see Simon's dad. And they're like, no, sorry, only family members can come visit him. And she's like, well, what if I marry his son, Simon? Um, which is an interesting place to go to.
Again, it echoes with the previous pages that we've seen.
Mhm,
It kind of reminds you of that previous issue
mhm.
12.
Yeah, exactly. Drawing you back there. So then we cut back to the Sentinel Hill School. It's now Thursday, second period. Um, Simon was assigned to work on a story about a basketball game, but the basketball game was canceled because the starting guard, Leclerc, who we saw from class a little while ago, didn't attend. Um, Danny is upset because that's the entirety of the article that she turned in. It's like a sentence. There's no way you're going to be able to fill up this much of a newspaper with that. Um, and Simon's like, "Well, how can I cover a game, Danny, if there wasn't one?" And she is trying to explain to him that it's not just about facts. It's not just about what happened. It's about the why of it. Why didn't Leclerc attend? Because she knows Leclerc would never miss a game. Basketball is his life. It's his only way out of this school. It's only the only way if he's going to make anything out of himself, it's going to be through basketball. Because he's not much of
Yeah,
a student.
it seems like a lot of the characters here are finding ways to get out of this
Yeah,
school.
right. Well, and it's also kind of the thing that Simon would latch onto is these characters who are trying to find a way out of school because he's trying to find a way out of school. And
But I think it's an old story trope
mhm,
when it comes to smaller towns. Like
mhm,
people are always looking for excuses to get out of town,
yeah,
skip to the city, find a real job.
yeah, yep,
But 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 for here it's smaller scale because they're still in school and it kind of links back to that in a smaller scale, like I
right,
said.
right. I think you're right. So she is telling him, look, if you want to get back into your, snobby private school, if you want to really work on this newspaper, you go find me the real story of what happened there, because there's a real story that happened there, and you don't know it yet. And if you don't know it, I can't put it in the newspaper. So,
Yeah, yeah,
sort of
because
swim.
Simon is just intent on speed running through this school.
Yeah, that is
Everybody's
it.
looking for an excuse to skip out of this school, and Simon's just going for it. He's speed running it.
But we don't really know if Danny wants to get out of the school. We just know that she's got the scholarship to get out of school. Like she never really says, I'm going to get out of here. I can't wait to get out of here or anything like that.
But it's
You
the
know,
same thing. She's trying to get a better life for herself.
yeah,
It's just kind of like I said before. It's just like finding a reason to get out of town, looking for a better opportunity because maybe you don't want to work for your parents or
yeah,
something like that. Kind of similar to what Matt is going through, actually.
yeah. It's similar to kind of like a lot of them. They're all trying to figure out sort of
Mhm.
what the future holds for them. Um, But I also think, like, Simon, this story is told through Simon's point of view. We're getting Simon's view of Sentinel Hill. Simon's view of Sentinel Hill is this weird, dope, pot smoking girl who's kind of weird and sort of showing me weird things. And then we have this girl who's, a school reporter and is really kind of focused, and she's got a scholarship that she can get out of here. But so in Simon's mind, she must want to get out of here. She must not want to be in Sentinel Hill School. But she never says that. Like that's Simon's interpretation, because if he was in her place, that's what he would want to do. And so, like,
That's the logical thing
yeah,
for him.
yeah, for him, like, that's the only thing that makes sense. And so, like, you know, Clark playing basketball, of course, he must, that must be his thing. That's the only way he's going to get out of this town. So, of course, why would he miss a game if that's the only way he's going to get out of this school? So, it's all kind of filtered through Simon's point of view. So then we cut to what happened to Leclerc, and we see that he's in the pit now, and he's got like bone spurs growing out of him. And someone is talking above him about, this one seems almost spent. You'll simply have to bring me more specimens. And so something is going on there. Somebody is talking to somebody else about bringing more specimens, and presumably more of these high school kids. That's kind of creepy. What's going on with the Clark? You want to talk about his look and how you
Yeah,
designed that?
there's obviously some sort of experiments going on in this place, and it's and I like the way that the story is slowly coming into focus with
Hmm.
what's going on. We start out very vague, and then throughout the story, we kind of gather information about what's going on, like linking the missing students, those that maybe those students who are skipping school are actually being abducted and
Yeah,
being experimented on, but
yeah,
we still don't know the whole truth yet. So I kind of like that.
yeah.
For the look of the character, it, I just wanted him to have this uh, strange look to him, like um, I don't know what they've been injecting him with,
Hmm.
but it's obvious that his body is rejecting it.
Yeah.
But because he's athletic, he seems to be fighting,
Hmm.
and whatever happened to the other kids is not having the same effect with him. But we still have to find out what happens to him later on.
Yeah. And we've talked before about how both you and I like a good mystery. And really, that's sort
Mhm.
of what we're doing here, is we're just laying the clues for, this mystery of what's happening to these kids.
Yeah,
So, yeah, go ahead.
in science fiction and horror, we usually have these sort of stories wherein
Hmm.
there are experiments in
Hmm.
small or far off farms or dark places in the underground areas,
Hmm.
but we haven't really tackled that in this book, and we thought that it would be a great opportunity to look into that. Uh, I think what really spurred the idea was that what's going on with the rest of the town?
Yeah,
Like, is it possible that these things are only happening to the kids? Is it
right.
also happening in other parts of Miskatonic?
Yeah,
So that's the area that we wanted to explore, and so we came up with this idea.
yeah. And also that, we've been so focused on Miskatonic, but like maybe like worse things would happen to people who are less connected, that people wouldn't miss as much, if they disappeared. And so would it be worse for them? We saw it a bit with the Fridge's stepdaughter. where weird things were happening to her and she was kidnapped. You know,
Yeah.
it's like really the weakest people in town and the um, most susceptible really have it the worst. And
Yeah.
we don't always see that because we're in a private school with
Hmm.
smart kids. But really it can get much worse.
Yeah, and I know we design these books to be standalone for the
Mhm.
most part, but for the avid readers who really combs through the information in the books, they'll notice that most of these incidents is connected to the Arkham Society.
Right.
So I think that's also an important part of this is that the involvement and what the Arkham Society is for is slowly coming into focus.
Right.
So it's only going to get more interesting from this point on.
Right. Um, so we then jump back over to Miskatonic High, where Sarah is helping Simon in a biology class, do some biology work. Apparently, Simon came on halfway through the school year, but the biology teacher is making him do all the work from the previous semester, and so Sarah's trying to help him out by dissecting this frog. And Kimmy is there hiding under the table or whatever, and she thinks the dissected frog is lunch. Um, and then again, we're seeing this through Ricky. So Ricky and Jenny show up, and Ricky wants to know the real story about Anton because it's clear that something is not right with Anton. If you were a kid in Miskatonic High and suddenly Anton showed up and he's best friends with Sarah and Alex and Matt and all of them, but he's got these weird scars about him and he's supposed to be a brand new student, like that is fishy. There's something weird there, and so Ricky is like he wants to find out what it is. Um, so he is confronting Anton and he's like, I want the real story. I want to know where you got those scars, which of course he got from being reanimated, and why no one seems to know anything about your past. And Anton, of course, isn't having any of it. Anton's like, you want the real truth? There's scars from when I got a new identity because I'm in witness protection. I'm really a stockbroker for the mob, and I'm just hiding out, only pretending to be a high school kid. Ricky, of course, thinks all of the Anton's making fun of him, which he is, and so he's like, he thinks I can't see the truth, and he's determined to find out. Um, Incidentally, that is the actual storyline from one of my favorite '80s teen comedies, Hiding Out, which stars the guy from what Two and a Half Men, I think. Anyway, yep. So uh, there was one where he was a stockbroker for the mob, and he pretended to be a high school kid, and hid out in high school. Um,
Which one was that?
I think it's called High.
Charlie Sheen?
No, it was Pretty in Pink, Ducky, I think. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so it was one of those like lesser known teenage high school movies from the
I
1980s.
don't remember that movie, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it kind of resonates as being
yeah,
an 80s movie.
yeah, doesn't it? So we then go back to Simon at Sentinel Hill. Simon can't find. He tries calling the clerk, but he doesn't get. He just gets an answering. He just gets the voicemail. Um, and then he bumps into Tracy, and Tracy's like, "Oh, let's break into his locker," because of course Tracy is like, I'll do what I want. I'm Tracy. Um, so they break into the locker and they find that all his books are there, his jacket's there. He's got an old test from Mrs. Spencer's class there that he failed, um, but there's no real clues about where he went. Um, so they still can't figure out where he went, but they know that he's missing. Tracy's like, well, we'll just wait, he'll probably turn up. And Simon's like, well, if we have to wait, why don't we do all your missing homework? Let's do that. Because that sounds fun to Simon. um, then we go back to Miskatonic High, and Ricky and Jenny are out in the woods trying to find out what happened to Chris. So back in issues 21 and 22, the party, Chris chased Sarah out into the woods, and Sarah threatened him with a knife. Um, and then, she had her whole thing, but Chris hasn't been seen ever since. Um, Jenny finds the knife, but doesn't say anything. She just sort of moves it out of the way. And she points out to Ricky, Sarah doesn't seem like the type to hurt anyone. And Ricky points out, well, who knows what people are capable of? Again, Ricky doesn't know these characters the way we know them. He's seeing them from the outside, and things look really weird from the outside. Sarah runs off into the woods with his kid, and his kid is never seen again. You can't just trust Sarah's when she says, I didn't do anything, because you don't really know Sarah. Maybe something happened. And that's the point. You can't trust what people are saying. You have to be sure. And if people are telling you, don't look over here, that's exactly when you do need to look over there, because that's the whole point. It's kind of the whole point of being on a newspaper is you're there to check everyone. You don't just accept what the administration says. You have to be confirm that what they're saying is true. If the students are saying something, you have to confirm what they're saying is true, because people lie, people make stuff up, and it's kind of your responsibility to find out why they're doing things. It's again going back to Danny's point about how it's not the what of things that happen, it's why they happen. And if you don't know, there's the chance that people could be doing harm. And so you're the check on that. So that it's kind of a peek into Ricky's point of view. Um, as they're out there, his phone dings because he's got it set up for a news alert. So whenever there's a news alert about Miskatonic or Miskatonic High or anything like that, it dings so that he knows that there's news going on. And it's nearby. So they go over and they find Jenny's dad, who we know is a federal investigator, and they have found a dead body, and they're taking up the evidence, and reporters are already on the scene. Ricky and Jenny come over and start asking questions. We know that the body is Mary, Matt's mom, which got disposed there. They think it's Chris, but it's not Chris. It's Mary. It's Mary, Matt's mom, because it's a middle-aged white woman with blonde hair. Was it hard to sort of? I'm looking at this first panel of the crime scene. Was it hard to figure out how to fit all of this in one panel? Because we got Ricky and Jenny over here, we got her dad here collecting evidence, we have the newspaper reporters down here, and we have the guys pulling the body out over here. So
yeah.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I would have done this a bit further from what's happening, but yeah, I had to fit in all of these characters, and there were some police guys that couldn't make it in because I had to make space for the dialogue as well. But I think it conveys the idea of what's going on there already.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think so too.
I think the challenging part was just composing the image so that we could still see the body being pulled out uh, of what is it, a river or a lake? I don't really know.
Right. I think it's
And
like a little pond or something. Yeah.
yeah, and then we also had to make sure that Ricky and Jenny was also in the shot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you use the color to draw our attention to Ricky and her dad,
Yeah.
with them being sort of the lighter and the more vibrant colors, as opposed to the reporters and the other police officers.
Yeah, and also the evidence. We
Yeah.
could we could clearly see that there are blood and some bits of skin, which ordinarily, if you find a body, it should still be at least intact, not in pieces. So it
Yeah.
kind of gives you an idea of who this these parts belong to.
Right. Right, and sort of again using Ricky's story to go around and find news. Again, we're checking in on all these stories that sort of happened before. So Sarah out in the woods, Sarah and the Carnies down in the basement, into the walls, you know, and then here's another one where we're checking in on Matt's story, and Matt's story is the police are now aware that the mom was killed, and they're closing in because they're going to need to find a suspect. When you have what you suspect is a murder, that's not something you can sweep under the carpet, especially when there's a federal agent involved. They're gonna want to know what happened there, because also Mary was a prominent citizen in Miskatonic. So, there's this is kind of laying the groundwork for what's coming up as well. Um, so as Ricky and Jenny are leaving, Agent Mason is calling to Phil, which is Alex's dad, saying that we have a hair sample from your sister-in-law. Don't tell Matt or Christian, but I think we found Mary. So really sort of setting up that there's been a murder, they know who it is, and they're starting to have some suspicions. We then go to
Yeah,
Friday.
very light story.
Yeah, right? Man,
Very
this is a
poppy
dark one.
high school story.
Yeah, it's nothing but jokes here. Um,
Yeah, I don't remember this story being so dark.
I know, right?
Murder, missing kids, experiments.
Yeah. Um, so Friday first period, they're back in auto shop, and now Tracy is missing. She's not at attendance, and Mr. Byrne is saying that he's going to add her to the list, to the to the dropout list. Simon immediately runs to Danny and says Tracy's missing. Um, Danny says that she probably is just hiding out from Mrs. Spencer because she's supposed to turn in the work today. Um, but Simon's like, no, I helped her. I managed to finish all the work and she was going to turn it in today. Um, so she tells him to go talk to Mrs. Spencer. She's going to go check, her pot supplier. She's his best customer, so he would probably know where she is. So we follow Simon into Mrs. Spencer's class, and Mrs. Spencer is like, you know what, Simon? Again, she's thinking about retirement. She's like, it was predictable that Tracy was going to disappear. Um, and Mrs. Spencer sort of lays it out for Simon. Simon is this kid who came from Miskatonic High, this elite private school, and so he really hasn't been at Sentinel Hill long enough to understand that this is the way things are. That kids go missing. Um, most of them, most of the classes may as well be ancient languages. It's not going to help them at all. Only some of them make a real effort to even try in class. Um, and the other ones, like Tracy, they wind up addicted to something or someone and they disappear. And to be honest, it's best to forget about them and just try to save yourself. So Mrs. Spencer's like really just harshly telling Simon, forget about it. These kids go missing. Well, there's only so many good kids in this school anyway. Who cares? Just let it go. Um, and then we cut, of course, to the pit, and there is Tracy in it. Um, and she hears from above, we have to wait for her system to detoxify because, of course, Tracy does a lot of drugs. Um, and so we know that Tracy is in serious trouble because we've seen what's happened to the last two kids who ended up in the pit. Either they died or they were in very, very serious situation. So now we have the stakes of why Simon and them need to solve this mystery. So then we go to Friday after school, and Simon goes to see Jack. Jack is in the auto shop. He's working after class. Mr. Byrne is making him stay late. Simon wants to know how he is sure that Mark didn't actually drop out. Remember, Mark is the kid that Jack is upset about, and doesn't want to go on the dropout list. Um, Jack is sure because Jack was gonna inherit his uncle's boat, and they were working up to fix it and take it over. And so he knows that Mark wasn't gonna leave because they had plans together. Um, so Simon tells him that he's scared about Tracy being gone too. Um, and Simon is like, Mr. Burns said he was going to put them on the list, and what's this list? And so Jack is explaining the dropout list, and they keep it in the school office. So they go over to the school office, and they're going through the records, um, and they find out that Mark didn't turn up on Tuesday, but for some reason he was put on the dropout list on Monday. So like, how was he put on the dropout list a day before he didn't show up? And then Simon has another question, which is, why is Jack's name on the list as well? So um, they're starting to think about this. Leclerc, Tracy, um, they Simon recalls that when they went through Leclerc's locker, Leclerc's coat was there. So he hadn't gone home that night. He was at the school when he disappeared. Tracy, the same thing. But Mr. Byrne marked them both dropped out before either of them could even know that they went missing. So they put together that Mr. Byrne is the one who's doing this. Simon wants to call the police, but Jack's like, fuck that, we're gonna deal with this ourselves. Um, he tells Simon to watch his back, and he goes into the auto body shop where Mr. Byrne is. Um, while Jack goes in and Simon is outside, sort of looking through the window, Mrs. Spencer comes out. She's walking through the parking lot. Um, Simon tells her what's going on. Um, she's like, "Oh, you're all worked up. I've got something that will help you out." Meanwhile, Simon is looking in, and something is happening to Jack. Something is happening, and then he turns around, and we see that he's being tasered by Mrs. Spencer. Sort of a stun gun sort of thing. Um, and and as he is passing out, Mr. Byrne comes out and says a second one. And she explains Simon was expelled from his last school. No one's gonna miss him. And Mr. Byrne says, "Okay, let's float them both on down." So now we know that Mrs. Spencer and Mr. Byrne are working together. We know that they're the ones kidnapping the kids, and we know that they're tossing them in bins and tossing them and floating them down the river somewhere. And so that's going on. How that works out, we're going to find out. But first, we cut back to Ricky and Jenny. They are walking through the parking lot to head back to the newspaper to go put their stories to bed. And they see Mr. Wally, who's missing his car. So, we see the car, and we see that he's at Matt's house looking to have an appointment with the Arkham Society and with Mary. But of course, Mary, we know, is now dead. So they go in, and he's actually having a meeting with Matt. Matt is, behind using a light so that Mr. Wally can't see him, and is with the elder thing, who is looking into Mr. Walid's mind. So we know the elder thing can read thoughts, is telepathic, and the images that are coming from Mr. Walid's mind are very weird. He's seeing Kerwin, he's seeing Mary, he's seeing the school, he's seeing a stabbing.
A
And
lot of things going on.
right, and maybe he witnessed his own death. It's all very strange. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. We've known for a while now that things are not quite right with Mr. Walid, and
No, they're not.
no, they are not. Um, can we talk about this panel of Mr. Walid's thoughts and
Yeah,
images?
we
Because
were just talking about
yeah,
murders, missing kids,
yeah,
experiments, and now we have finally some details about Walid.
hmm
And yeah, the script asks for a shattered glass. It's like his mind is going through different variation of trauma,
Mhm.
and we don't know which is which and from what timeline or
Right.
from when
Yep.
exactly. So I made I made it purposely jumbled up, like
Mhm.
some are turned upside down, some
Yep.
sideways, and in no particular order at
Yep.
all. So yeah, different settings,
Mhm.
different situations, and maybe even different look, slightly different look, maybe when during that time. And yeah, it was a bit challenging, but I had a clear idea of what I wanted this to look like, and I think it came out okay, I guess.
I, I think it came out great, but um, can one thing that I want to just mention is I love the color palette here. Like the using the green, like the green is one thing. Okay, so the green tells me this is, obviously some kind of flashback or something like that. But then these pops of like red, orange, like that's not a
Mhm.
color combination that I would put with green. So it really jumps out with you, but it also matches like the feeling of blood and like this. It's like it's I really like the color combination there.
Yeah, but I usually do this when when Ren
Hmm.
looks into the mind of the people and
Hmm.
to the background. So green and red is usually the palette that I use for this.
Hmm.
And I think it's great to have that splash of color there just to
Yeah.
add a bit of contrast, because it's pretty hard to convey blood when it's mimicking other colors. So
Yeah.
I had to make sure that that was the standout color there, aside from like certain backgrounds. Like
Yeah.
instead of a dark sky, I would put red sky or something like that. So yeah.
But I mean, it really works because it's that feeling that the blood pops. So it's like
Yeah, I
you look at
can't remember with color theory if it's supposed to be like complementary colors or
Mhm.
the other stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it really works. I like it a lot. Um, so yeah, so it's such a nice vision. It's a nice image. It really puts us into the mindset of how messed up Waleed is right now. Um, and he is saying, Kerwin told him to come here, and he said that he needed Atlantean blood. We don't know what that means yet, um, but that's why he's here. Matt, of course, thinks he's crazy and says, "Ugh, just throw him out." Um, and so he's like, please, won't anybody help me? And we jump back to now Simon is in the pit. So we know that Mrs. Spencer and Mr. Byrne are the ones who are bringing the kids to the pit. Um, it does not appear that Simon has been experimented on yet. He can hear Jack's voice in another pit nearby. And of course Jack is pissed off at Simon because like, dude, you were supposed to be the lookout. What happened? Um, Mrs. Spencer is there. She throws water on Jack. Um, and then we get the nice sort of the villain explaining their reasons here, where
Mhm.
we get Mrs. Spencer and Mr. Byrne explaining that they have no retirement plan, that really they're a public school teacher, they don't make a lot of money, they don't really have much of a way in a retirement plan. And so they decided that they're going to take these ungrateful students that never want to learn anything and turn them into their retirement fund. They found a benefactor who likes to experiment, so they sold these kids to them as a way to make money. um, this was kind of the germ for the mystery that we had for this. Like we knew that kids were disappearing, but we didn't really know like how it was going to work. And kind of I have friends who are teachers, and one of them was telling me, people have this view of teachers as like these great selfless people who only want to teach kids, and they really want to rise these kids up. And they're like, look, I go to work every day just like you do. Sometimes I
Hmm.
have really crappy days where all I want to do is just get through the day. And the idea of reaching a kid or inspiring a kid is really not the thing on my list of things to do that day. It's just to get through this lesson plan. And I thought, well, if teachers are just normal, doing their job just like normal people, there are those people who embezzle money and steal from their companies and do this, that, or the other thing. So what would it look like for a teacher? Instead of stealing money, they're going to steal kids. Um, so I thought that was an interesting idea. I thought it was like a good mystery that people wouldn't see coming.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before about why certain people in authority wouldn't touch the what was going on in and around the school is because they're just doing their job and they don't
Yeah.
want to get in trouble themselves because it, there are bigger people involved and they know that if they mess with the wrong people they'll lose their job, their pension, and
Yep.
maybe even disappear themselves.
Right. So in the background, we see this hand reaching towards the taser, and it turns out to be Danny's hand. Danny had followed Simon and them to here, and is going to try and rescue them. But whoops, Mr. Byrne happens to see her and grabs her, and why don't you come and join the rest of the class? But then the clerk shows up, and we find out that no, the clerk isn't dead, but something has happened to him, and he is messed up. Um, he attacks Mrs. Spencer, and then he and Mr. Burns start fighting off, start beating up on each other and going off, leaving Danny there to let Simon and Jack out. Um, she helps them out, and they find that Tracy is tied up. Tracy's like, Danny's like, Tracy, are you okay? And she's like, no, I haven't smoked up in days. And Simon's like, you've only been here, for one day. Um, Danny has the camera and she's going to take some pictures. Um, one thing that I want to mention again, I liked it on the covers. I like it here. Is these glowing tubes that have the bodies in them? That's really cool. I
Yeah.
That looks awesome. I absolutely love that. Like the layout of these pits, and then the stonework, and then the brickwork, and then these tubes. It's like this is like my ideal, you know, uh, mad doctors, mad scientists lair. I love everything about this. This looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the teachers, I thought it was pretty interesting to. I've always liked them as being the antagonists in this
Mhm.
story,
Yeah.
and to be in this kind of place, it kind of throws you off that you're expecting someone with round glasses
Mhm.
and rubber gloves, and
Yep.
instead you find a PE teacher, auto mechanic teacher, and a history teacher instead manning the place.
Right.
And yeah, we were seeing these tubes earlier on in the book,
Mhm.
but it's only now that we see what's inside them. And like what we saw with Leclerc earlier, I wanted these experiments to look like failures.
Yeah.
Like these were the kids earlier who were missing.
Mhm.
Can you just imagine if you were the parent and you saw these? This would horrify anyone.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, the amount of mutation and
Mhm.
change in these kids. I mean, if you didn't watch this commentary, I don't think you might have that sense, but you won't have the the final say on this. But yep, these are the missing kids.
Yeah, right. Well, I also like that, we've talked about this before that, we use a lot of Lovecraft in the book, but we're not solely devoted to Lovecraft. And so, like, these tubes don't look like anything you would see out of Lovecraft. This is, like cool B horror, sci-fi stuff, and it's all mixed together and it works really well together. And I really like it. I like that this is such a cool visual to bring into it as well.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
a,
we're fans of sci-fi as
Mhm.
well as horror, and we love a good B movie kind
Mhm.
of vibe, and the kind of experiments in
Right.
like we mentioned before. And yeah, I think mm, there were other things I was thinking about, like aquariums full of
Oh yeah.
mermaid-like
Uh-huh.
creatures, or even maybe little babies, but I think that was just going too far, and dismembered bodies and crap like that. So yeah, I pulled myself back.
This is you being restrained. I like it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe in other parts of the cave.
Yeah, parts we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there
Yeah.
are giants there, or
Ooh.
small little people.
Well, we've never caught the guy who's doing all the experiments, so who knows what he's got going on.
And we never really confirmed whether this is the one and only.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I also remember stuff from the 80s like
Mhm.
Akira,
Yep.
wherein they experiment with kids that look like old people, and that kind of creeped me out when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Also, there were animes of this kid seeing his mom being turned into a crystal statue, and that kind
Yeah.
of messed me up when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
Uh-huh.
And even cyborgs with dismembered bodies, like
Yep.
when you're a kid, it's creepy like that. So yeah, I think visuals like this are very effective to convey both horror and science gone wrong.
Right. Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned the anime because one of the things that I always liked about anime when I was young was the way that it showed light. You know, it's one thing to show like white, but in anime, light looks different than in like really Western cartoons. In Western
Mhm.
cartoons, light doesn't look like light. It just looks like yellow or whatever. But in anime, the way that they use color to have the white or the yellow or whatever, it just pops so much and it feels
Yeah,
like light. And I'm getting that same feeling from these tubes where it's like you're using color in such a way that it feels like these are glowing. It
yeah.
really does. It feels like light is actually coming out of the page to me. I absolutely love what you're doing with the color here.
Yeah, since the story was set underground,
Mhm.
it would be really hard for the whole part of this story to be just set in darkness.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of ways to like introduce light into the panels.
Hmm.
And I thought maybe the tubes are glowing, and I remember some science fiction movies wherein there's light above the tubes and stuff. It's like moving through a macabre museum.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, it works. It works so well. I, I talk about it every time, but the way that you fill in the spaces to make this world bigger and more realistic and more interesting, it really brings so much to it. I absolutely love what you're doing here. It's amazing. Um,
but at the same time, we don't really tell much about it. It's still a
right.
mystery.
But that's what's great about it is so what it,
It's just in the
it
background.
right, but in the same way that we're adding new characters to make this world feel bigger and feel more lived in and feel more real, adding these little details in the background is what makes this world feel bigger and more real. It's like, if you have a mad scientist and he's just sitting there and he's got one device, it's like, okay. But if there's all kinds of devices in the background and you don't tell the audience what they are, the audience gets to use their imagination to think, oh, what does that device do? Oh, I think I can see he's being cut off at the waist there. So I wonder if he's going to be merged with something on the bottom of his body. It's just you you allow the audience to fill in the details themselves, which is much, you know, I love that types of storytelling.
Yeah, and I also wanted it to be different from what we saw with Herbert West,
Yeah.
where it was more medical
Hmm.
supply, medical equipment and
Hmm.
supply. So he's a different kind of a mad scientist from what we have here.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to convey that, yeah, there's a lot of uh, crazy guys in this world with different kind of experiments, and it makes the world even more scarier because
Mhm.
they're all in the background going on at the same time that the kids are experiencing the weird monsters
Yeah.
and things like that. So yeah, like you said, it makes the world even bigger.
Yeah. Which is, it's one of the things that I really like about it. So Jack is beating up on Jack decides to get into the fight with Mr. Byrne. He makes sure that Danny has the camera ready because he wants to get a picture of him beating up on Mr. Byrne. She's taking pictures, and while she does, in the background, there's someone over there. It's the mad scientist or whatever turns up, and then she manages to get a picture. Um, whoever the mad scientist or person is, knows that it's time to abandon these experiments, and slams the door shut, and locks everybody in. Um, Mrs. Spencer says, it's worse than just being locked in. He's going to hide his tracks. He's got this whole place set up to explode. And immediately the roof starts caving in. And they need to find a way out. They run back to the river, which is how they got in here, and there's the containers that they came in. Um, they decide to get in and the containers and try to float out before the whole place tumbles in after them. But Tracy hears Leclerc's voice saying, "Help me," and so she goes back to help out Leclerc while the rest of them float off down the river. Um, it's everything is going insane. Tracy is back there. Danny's like, "You little idiot." Um, and we get this visual of Leclerc's foot sort of watching as they're going down the river. Um, that's a crazy scene. Do you want to talk about how you visualize that and really added so much energy to it?
Yeah, I've always loved the idea of these underground places.
Layers, yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of these things in here, but
Yeah.
I always like the idea of adding it in horror stories.
Mhm.
There's so much potential there, and it's always like built-in creepiness to it.
Mhm.
So yeah, the way that we the way that we envisioned the story was that the whole place was lined with explosives, and that the moment that everything goes belly up, it will just explode. And so it's against time now for the kids to escape, and I always like that as part of the story, like a ticking time bomb, and
Yeah.
literally ticking time bomb. So yeah, it has to have a certain energy to it, wherein the kids are, it's like being in front of it in the middle of the action,
Mhm.
and you just want it to have as much energy as possible as the whole place is crashing down. So but it's also dark,
Yeah.
so have to introduce some light source throughout the panels so that
Right.
it creates a bit more contrast and color to the whole place. But yeah, I always like drawing these kind of places.
Right. It's interesting how you use yellow as a repeated sort of like color motif where like he's pounding on the door and it's yellow and he's beating up on Mr. Byrne and it's yellow and she's gonna use the stun gun and it's yellow and the explosions are going off and they're yellow and then
Yeah,
there's the little
it
lantern.
comes from old school comic books. Like
Yeah.
if you notice, I always use the old style of conveying how people pound on
Yeah,
doors
yeah, yeah.
or knocking out people. It's been utilized since like maybe since the Kirby era,
Yeah.
but it's gone out of fashion lately, and artists like their drawings to be more realistic.
Yeah.
But I kind of lean back to those kind of stuff because I like the more cartoony kind of drawings because it gives you way more leeway with the way you
Hmm.
draw. Because if you're drawing too realistic, it kind of constrains you,
Yeah.
makes it too strict,
Yeah.
and you just can't make stuff comic booky. And that's
Yeah.
what I like about comic books is that it looks like a comic book. It
Right.
doesn't look like a movie, it doesn't look like an animation, it looks like a comic book. I want it to be goofy when it's
Yeah.
goofy, I want it to be dark when it's dark.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I always refer back to the older artists, and that's why I continue to use those effects.
And I think it works. Again, we've talked about this before about, Miskatonic High really resides between things. It's like it's horror, but it's not too horror. It's comedy, but it's not too comedy. It's teenage, but it's not too teenage. It's comic booky, but it's not too comic booky. And that's what I like about it is that we can lean back and forth between all these things and use them whatever in whichever ways it works best for that story or that issue or whatever. And so yeah, I agree that it's a comic book. It should look like a comic book. So we see them going down the river. We see the ceiling come crashing down, and we cut back to Ricky and Jenny, and they are just putting the newspaper, finishing off the newspaper. Ricky's like, we should go out and celebrate, and she's like, I only date girls. Um, and but his phone starts dinging and it's a news alert and so they turn on the TV and they see Simon outside this caved in area and he's being interviewed by the local news reporter um, who is telling them all about the Sentinel Hill Regional School, these teachers have been kidnapping these kids. The teachers were killed during the explosion, along with a pair of our friends. And then they start hearing a voice, and there's Tracy. She's down there, and apparently Leclerc shoved her into a safe little space so that the ceiling wouldn't cave in on her. Um, and they managed to rescue her and get her out of there. Um, the reporter asks, can you tell us more? And Simon's like, no, you have to read it in the Sentinel Hill Observer because he's now part of the newspaper. Um, Jenny comes over, Danny comes over and is, so happy that Tracy's okay, so happy that Simon's okay. And they agree that Simon is going to be part of the newspaper. He's earned his spot on the newspaper. Um, Tracy likes him. Danny's is thinks he's okay. Um, Meanwhile, Jack comes over and he's like, "If you guys are done hugging each other, can we get back to the fact that somebody tried to kill us?" Which
Hmm.
is nice to have somebody who remembers that you know what's actually going on here.
Yeah.
Um, he checks out Danny's picture, who apparently did not get a good picture of whoever it was that was there in the doorway. Um, and says, "Look, I want revenge. I'm going to be part of this. But in the meantime, you need a better photographer because you suck." And so he's going to be the photographer for the newspaper now. Danny immediately starts arguing with Jack because that's who Danny is. Danny likes to argue with people. Tracy wants to know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to find out who did this? And Simon, having had a lot of experience at Miskatonic High, is like, in my experience, the people who are impossible to find, if you look, are the people who, if you make enough noise, are going to come and find you. Um, and so they run a story, who is killing the kids, in the Sentinel Hill Observer, and we see somebody is reading the newspaper as we end this issue. So that was it. It's a nice mystery. It really sets up Simon at the new school. We see a bit of Ricky and Jenny over at Miskatonic High. We get a little update on all of the characters and sort of what's going on over there. And I think it came out really well.
Yeah, lots of things introduced and lots of things going on as well, but also we're kind of covering previous storylines
Mhm.
and bringing it a bit more information.
Mhm.
And I think the world is growing
Mhm.
and things are getting more serious.
Mhm.
And as you'll see in future issues, this is just the tip of the iceberg, fortunately.
Right.
But I don't think you want to see what's underneath the iceberg.
Yeah, not just yet. I don't. Certainly think our kids don't want to see it because it's only going to get worse for them. Ooh.
Hmm.
Hmm. So that is issue 27. We have ordered the comics. They have not arrived yet. So once they arrive, we'll go ahead and get them shipped out to everybody. And then we'll go on to issue 28, which is another another really fun one. Um, I was
Yeah.
I let somebody read issue 28 just recently, and they came
Oh,
back and
really?
yeah, and they came back and they're like, this is one of my favorite issues so far. So yeah, I think people are really gonna like this next one.
So you want to give a teaser?
Sure. So things are falling around Matt as the Arkham Society are starting to figure out that something is not quite right with Matt as he pretends to be somebody he's not. And the only way that he can sort of save his hide is with a heist. They're going to
A
break,
heist.
yeah, a heist. They're going to break uh, a deranged spawn of an outer god out of a mental asylum. And it's going to be nothing but child play.
Man, that sounds boring.
I know. Why do we write such boring comics?
No, I think I am pretty excited for that.
Yeah, I
Sounds
really,
really cool.
yeah, I like this one. I like that one. I think that's going to be a
I
lot of
really
fun.
had fun drawing that.
Yeah, I had fun writing it, and we again introduce a new character in that one, kind of, but also we get to see a lot of our old characters sort of working together in ways that we haven't seen before, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think things are culminating s- into something, and I think the next issue is
Mhm.
going to be one of the starting point of it.
Yeah.
If these previous ones were laying down the foundations, things are going to get serious by next issue.
Right, and we're really sort of getting into the storylines that are going to,
And I mean
yeah,
the way the way that we were reacting with the things that was going on in this issue, I mean, it's already serious.
yeah,
There's so much stuff going on that the other kids are not even aware of.
right,
Remember, this is only Simon and Ricky and some of the newer kids. So for all we know, the kids are unaware of what's happening in these parts
right.
of the town.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yep.
crazy stuff.
Oh man, so much fun. Yeah, so we will be after we mail out the issues for issue 27, we'll go ahead and launch the next campaign for issue 28. So be on the lookout for that. Um, that's all that, and then also, of course, this one kickstarted. We went ahead and printed up the first trade paperback for season 4. So it's
Wow, we got so many stuff already that maybe we should think about coming up with a Omni book series,
right.
collecting all. It's kind of hard selling the trade paperbacks or the hardbacks separately. That it kind of warrants an omnibus of some sort at
I'm not
this point.
right. I'm not. We actually have people who ask us about that, somewhat regularly.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I just, it's one of those things where it's hard enough figuring out where the breaks are between the trade paperbacks, because
yeah, true.
when we first started, we could do a whole sort of season in one trade paperback, and our seasons have gotten longer, so we sort of had to find the places to break it. And I don't know,
Yeah,
like,
maybe the
yeah,
first 3 seasons
yeah,
is a good cut off.
yeah, that might be a good idea. We'll have to look into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I got. Anything else you want to say
Oh,
to everybody?
we're still on.
Yeah. Might
No, no,
trim that part.
I'm glad that people are still enjoying the book. So uh, please join us for the next issue, and I hope you enjoy this one as well.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
important.
Yeah. All right, thanks everybody.